Can you guys hear me? All right. I'm Dave Lewis. I know a lot of you guys and don't know a lot of you too. So kind of first things first. How many of you in this room, this is your first Region 8 conference? Okay, we got a bunch of newbies. I'm kind of an old timer. Been around for a long time in this region. So everybody that raised your hand, how many of you are hungover? Liars. So if not everybody in this room is somewhat hungover, then I need to come back because I haven't spent all week here and Spencer's doing something wrong. So again, how many people are really just a little bit hungover? That's better. That looks a little more legit. Okay, so again, Dave Lewis, I'm with Direct Discharge Consulting. I own the company. Prior to Direct Discharge, I was a pretreatment coordinator for a local utility, a couple of local utilities. So kind of over the years, I think this is the first conference I've missed in like 10 years. So over the years, I've gone through this conference, sat in the seats that you guys are sitting in now, and listened to people talk about FOG programs and pretreatment, regulation, 403, blah, 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 blah. But I'm an operator with a little bit of pretreatment background. Started out as an operator, wanted to move into something a little more high-tech than operations. So I ended up in pretreatment. So how many of you are operators? Good. Because usually when I ask that question, there's like two people, and they're like, yeah, I do the stuff at the plant, but mostly I do pretreatment. So I asked Spencer if I could do a presentation this year on wastewater treatment processes, because usually you guys, I say you guys, you girls, you guys, whatever, you sit in the office at the pretreatment building at Denver Metro, and you've never even been to the plant. So what is our goal with pretreatment, right? Very interactive. I don't want to be standing up here and you guys are just looking at me. That guy's tall, skinny. I want to talk. So it was very interactive. So how many of you folks do some sort of operations and pretreatment? A couple of you. So where are you from? Clifton? All right, so I'm familiar with your plant to some extent. So did you start out as an operator and move into pretreatment? Why?
What's great about our district is you get to do all of those things.
Perfect, I love it.
Yep, and as an operator, you get to realize what the effect of industrial users is on the treatment facility.
That's the answer right there, right? As a pretreatment person, you are protecting the POTW, right? If you don't know how the POTW works, how the hell are you going to protect it? Fair question? So I encourage you all, if you're not into your operations or your collection system, as a pretreatment person, get involved. Understand what they're doing. Your collections guys and gals, they're in manholes. They're the dirty work of the whole system, right? They're the ones getting dirty every day. The guys in the treatment plant, they're pulling those fat bergs out of pumps and those damn flushable wipes. We have a talk on flushable wipes at all this week? All right, we beat that. What's that?
Sure, everyone has.
Yeah, but I think we beat that down over the last 5 years with the flushable wipe. Anyway, so let me grab this thing. Let's start off. So I wasn't here the first 2 days, but I've been here for 10 years. So I wanted to start off with some of my pretreatment conference assumptions for this week. So first one, hospitality suite was the only place where folks actually learned something this week. Is that accurate? Somewhat accurate? Spencer has not slept since last Saturday, and he looks that way. That's pretty accurate, I saw. Nancy drank the state of Wyoming out of Michelob Ultra. Can anybody vouch for that? Where is she? She's probably dry heaving somewhere. So Dean caught every walleye in the state of North Dakota and has shown everyone in this room pictures. Where's Dean? How many walleye did you catch this year, Dean?
Not so many, it's been a dry year.
Oh my God, now he's being humble about it. So Kurt was here, but I don't see him in the room, but I'm assuming he won the poker tournament that he organized. Did anybody play poker with Kurt?
You did not play.
He did not play. Something is wrong with this pre-treatment conference. Every year I lose like $100 to that guy. So Scott Caldwell, I don't know if you guys met Scott, but I guarantee you in the last 3 days, he's been here during the day, but you don't see him at night because he's secretly working on another amalgam project. Is that accurate, Scott?
I've been around some of these nights.
Have you? All right. So you guys, Scott Caldwell, you guys all know Scott, right? He basically did the dental amalgam rule. So let's a little round of applause for that, huh? Let's keep the mercury out of the sewer system. And by the way, you can tell Scott loves being the center of attention. Okay. So Al isn't here. Al is the Region 8 coordinator for EPA. Usually, he would arrange a bike ride that was way too damn long and then tell everybody about how he can beat me one-on-one in basketball. I don't know if you've met Al. Most of you probably have. If you have, he's like 5'8" and chubby. I'm 6'6" and a thoroughbred. Nancy, you going to get another beer? You're on my slideshow and you weren't here. What? I had to start off with some bullshit. So were you in here for the part where Nancy drank the state of Wyoming out of Michelob Ultra? Was that a good assumption?
I was not.
Doubtful. Anyway, and last but not least, every person in this room has had a great 3 days of learning. Is that accurate? Cool. All right, and before I go on any further, one more round of applause for Region 8, the board, everybody that made this happen. I forgot to put you on here. How many rolls of film have you been through? All right, let's get into it, guys. Okay, so lagoons, let's start with the basics, right? Who has a lagoon? You have a biolac, it's kind of a lagoon. And you got a lagoon with a pre-treatment program. Awesome. Because most of the time when I talk about lagoons, people are like, no, don't worry about pre-treatment on that. It's basically a hole in the ground that collects sewage. Fair? So, how do they work? Sewage flows from the collection system into the lagoon, usually BOD and TSS removal, right? We're going to aerate that sewage and let the TSS drop out. That's pretty much the basics of a lagoon, right? We've got algae, which is byproduct of photosynthesis, is oxygen. Wind and rain produce that oxygen. You know, wind currents makes waves, makes DO. BOD removed by the oxygen, TSS removed by detention time. You guys are familiar with detention time because you're doing calculations in the lab, right? Bugs in the sludge reduce waste further. So I'm a biology guy. Anybody that knows me outside of pre-treatment knows that like my whole life is bugs. And when I say bugs, I mean microorganisms, the biomass that does the work in the treatment plant. You guys follow me on that? It's not a giant filter. I don't know how many times I walk into a conference or something, they're like, wastewater treatment, that's just a giant filter. Sure. And don't put in an application. Okay, we got little lagoons and big lagoons, right? So this is not my picture, but we have a lagoon in the state of Colorado that has a pre-treatment program that's very similar to the size of that. It's a campground that actually has a sewer line that runs to a manufacturer. So trying to do your local limits evaluation on that is rough. Big lagoons, you know, that's South Dakota. That's a plant, that's in Aberdeen. Okay, rotating biological contactors and trickling filters, super old school technology. Has anybody ever heard of a rotating biological contactor? How do they work?
It's kind of like a trickling filter on a stick.
Trickling filter on a stick, like a jalapeno on a stick. Right. Big ass wheel with media on the side of it, goes into the sewage, comes back out, that's the air, the bugs create a slime on it, you get some reduction of ammonia and nitrate. RBCs are old. We don't really use them anymore. Is anybody from Longmont? Nope. Longmont has RBCs in the back room of their plant. They don't work anymore, but they're there for like historical knowledge, I guess, but they're huge. I mean, they've got to be 15 foot tall, 20 foot diameter. I mean, they're just huge. And back in the day, that's what the city of Longmont used for wastewater treatment. That was their pre-treatment program. So at that time, they just wanted to nitrify. Anybody know what nitrify means? No. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Nitrify, denitrify. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Some of you don't. I'm not busting chops, but raise your hand if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say nitrification. Okay, a couple of you. All right, so nitrification, denitrification, that's the basics of wastewater treatment. We'll get into it. So rotating biological contactors, the big disc that runs through the sewage. Trickling filters, basically think about a silo. I'm from back east, so everything's a silo. Big round tank full of rocks. And you spray sewage on the top of it. The sewage trickles through the rocks. And who's ever been in a septic tank? You feel that slimy stuff on the side of the septic tank? That's your biology. That's your bugs. That's your stuff that's doing the work. All that stuff grows on these rocks. And as you trickle wastewater across the top of this tank full of rocks, as it runs through the rocks, the bugs are absorbing and eating certain food. Ammonia, nitrate, things of that nature. By the time it gets to the bottom, it's fairly clean water. It's a little bit better than a lagoon for treatment, but still super basic. So RBC, a couple of pictures here. If you can imagine the flow, the sewage runs through this thing, this big biological contactor, so basically a giant disc, cloth kind of feeling material. It runs really, really slow, like half a revolution per minute. Goes into the sewage, comes back out, there's a fan and air is blown across this thing for that nitrification, denitrification. Trickling filters, again, same thing, just a big tank full of rocks, the sewage sprays on the top of it, what comes out the bottom is somewhat cleaner water. Okay, that's the last thing you'll hear me talk about RBCs and trickling filters because we don't really use them anymore. On-site wastewater treatment plants. Anybody ever heard of it? I'm literally talking about a glorified septic tank. That's all it is. Very seasonal systems, campgrounds, they use these type of systems. So OWTS, on-site wastewater treatment. There's my acronym of the day. Rural areas, really low flows. Similar to a septic tank, mountain campground, seasonal attractions. Royal Gorge used to have one of these. I'm sure you guys have all heard of the Royal Gorge, highest suspension bridge in North America. Maybe. Come on! All right. What? Oh man, you're talking my stuff now. We'll get into package plants. So let's just skip ahead here. So flow less than 20,000 gallons per day usually, and permitted. So I'm from Colorado, so you'll see a lot of stuff about Colorado. CDPHE is Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. They're the ones that give our permits out. So these on-site wastewater plants, they're usually regulated on pH, temp, BOD, TSS, and chlorine residual. So if you think about a lagoon or an RBC or anything like that, really small, campground type setting or a rural, seasonal attraction, Buffalo Bill Museum, stuff like that, they're going to get these huge influx of flow, right? But somehow I've got to get my pH right all the time, I got to drop some BOD and TSS, and then I've got to disinfect, so I've got to have a good chlorine residual. Very, very basic. This is an Aranco system. These are pretty common here in Colorado, so if you can imagine like this house here, that's part of a campground, all the flow comes into this box, and inside this box we've got basically a grease interceptor, right? So the flow comes in, it's aerated, it's got these holes in the front of it, basically it only lets so much water through at a time, a little bit of a filter issue here, and then it gets pumped out into the receiving stream. Very, very, very basic. Okay, now that we're done with the boring stuff, activated sludge. Who has heard the term activated sludge? Thank God. I don't know how many times I've walked in there like, you mean mixed liquor? I'm like, yes. So, activated sludge, this is the bugs. This is the biomass. This is the stuff, this is the magic. So what is activated sludge? Substance used for removing pollutants from wastewater by a biological reaction that involves oxygen. The activated sludge then separated from the treated wastewater and disposed of or returned to the process as needed. That's from a book. What does that mean to you guys? For you folks that have never worked in a plant, what does that mean to you? Come on. Nothing, right? Doesn't mean anything. It means there's something going on. We're calling it activated sludge. It removes the pollutants from the biological reaction, and somehow there's oxygen involved. And then we take that activated sludge, we move it around the plant apparently, and get rid of some of it, and we return some of it. Are you guys confused? Because I'm confused. That doesn't make any freaking sense whatsoever, unless you've been in a plant. So, pre-treatment folks, never been in a plant. This is kind of cumbersome, right? It's like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Why is he at a pre-treatment conference talking about shit? Nobody cares. We always have to care, because if you're pre-treatment, you control the source you control the pollutants at the source, correct? You kill my bugs at the plant, we got problems. I'm coming to the pre-treatment office, knocking on the door. Hey, which one of you suckers let them dump a whole bunch of perk down the drain? Where's perk come from? Yes. All right. So my whole life in the plant side is making sure my bugs are happy. In the pre-treatment world, we're trying to make sure that the bugs, or we're trying to make sure the industrial users aren't going to mess up with my bugs, right? Anybody ever thought about it that way? Because most pre-treatment folks I talk to, they're like, I got to protect the clean water in the river that we discharge to. Well, there's a giant multi-million-dollar piece of equipment in the middle between where your work ends and the river. So if we screw up that environment, we kind of screwed up the entire environment, right? In short, bugs are selected to treat wastewater based on the discharge requirements. So what that means, I don't know where a lot of you guys are from, because there's a lot of new faces here. So Noah's from Box Elder Sanitation. I know Noah well. I used to work at Box Elder. I was a pre-treatment coordinator there. So at Noah's plant, at Box Elder, it's a complete biological nutrient removal process with no chemical addition. We have a little bit of industrial use in our service area. I have to select the bugs in my treatment plant to specifically do the work that is required for my permit with an industrial user contribution. So I don't know if any of you guys have a B&R permit. We'll get into that in here in a little bit. But biological nutrient removal basically means you're putting out water that's going to be drinking water. You're putting out water from a wastewater plant that's probably going to go into somebody's drinking water plant. So if my bugs are not selected, I didn't create an environment for my bugs to thrive to do certain work for Box Elder's plant correctly, they're not going to work to treat the waste. Now, can I take the Box Elder bugs and put them in Colorado Springs Utilities and they'll do the same work? Absolutely not. Right? Colorado Springs has a whole different dynamic. Their water temperature is probably different. Their raw water, their surface water treatment, drinking water treatment is probably different than Box Elder. So that changes my alkalinity, changes my demand, the strength of the wastewater, the BOD. I don't know what's in Colorado Springs Utilities. Is it mostly bedroom community? Is it a whole bunch of industrial? What's the contribution of industrial versus Box Elders? So, this is why I became a consultant. I love the pre-treatment world. I love the operations world. But I couldn't do just one or two. I couldn't just be a plant manager at one plant. I had to see it all. I couldn't just be a pre-treatment guy at one plant. I had to see it all. So now I run hundreds of plants and consult on both sides of the fence. So that's why I'm very passionate about what I do, because no matter what plant I go to, the bugs are always different. The source water is always different. The sewage is different. The industrial contribution is different. So every day is a giant science project for me. Love it. So, talk about the discharge requirements. Everybody's familiar with your permit, correct? As a pre-treatment person, if you have not seen your permit, discharge permit for your treatment plant, when you get back to your plant tomorrow or Monday, find it. Know what's on that permit because it'll make a lot more sense of why you're developing your local limits and what those local limits are for. Okay. Any questions so far on that? Okay. So we've got good bugs and bad bugs. For example, does anybody know what this guy is? Water bear. What is a water bear an indicator of? High quality water, why?
Well, because low TSS, great BOD, they're top of the food chain.
How long does it take for a water bear to grow?
I'm not sure. I think 30 days.
Anybody? Anybody know how long it takes a water bear to grow? Somebody said something. 9 days.
Is it 90?
9 days. To go from a bacteria to that guy. And when you look under a microscope, that dude is literally looking like a bear, like cruising around. Sometimes you can hold up the slide and see him. So water bears are good bugs because it takes them 9 days. Does anybody know what MCRT is? Mean cell residence time. Anybody not know what MCRT is? Don't be shy, it's all right. MCRT is mean cell residence time. How long is the bug in the system? How long is the bug floating around in my wastewater treatment plant? Okay, somebody that knows what MCRT is. Somebody. What's your MCRT of your plant?
Right now, probably hovering around 5.5.
5.5. 5.5 days for a bug to be in his plant. Okay? It takes 9 days for that guy to grow. So what happens if I throw a weird slug load at that plant? That guy never grows. His MCRT is 5 days. That guy's barely making it to survive. You throw a weird slug load at it, that guy's dead immediately. Bacteria to dead, like that. So, we were talking, go ahead.
So MCRT is not the same as treatment?
MCRT is not what?
The same as how long it takes for the wastewater to be treated in your facility?
Nope. Nope. MCRT is really just how long your biomass is in the system, because we'll get into RAS and WAS here in a little bit, return activated sludge and waste activated sludge. So we talked about I got to create an environment for my bugs to thrive, to do the work that they're going to do. But I only need so many bugs to do that work. Some plants are different than others. Like Box Elder, they run their mixed liquor or their bug population at 25 to 2,800 milligrams per liter of bugs in their reactors. What's your mixed liquor?
About 4,000 right now.
Where are you at?
St. Breen.
That's why.
Yeah, we're at half capacity right now.
Yeah.
Expansion.
So they run 4,000 milligrams per liter to get the same, roughly, get the same treatment, right? So if we go back a little bit and say, okay, it takes 5 or 9 days for him to grow, he's got a 5-day MCRT, but the detention time, how long it takes for the water to get through the plant and actually be treated, could be anywhere, right? On high flows it's shorter, on low flows it's longer, right? All making sense a little bit? Did I lose anybody? How are you? I haven't seen you in years. You know what this is? Deloid rotifer. What does that guy do?
Doesn't he kind of eat the pin flock and some of the bacteria?
Yeah. So the cool thing, does everybody have a microscope at their plant? Stick your head in it. You'll be fascinated. So this guy kind of just cruises around, just walks around. He's the big dog in town. He's like, hey man, what are you doing? Oh, dead. I ate you. Those guys, the rotifers over there, if you look at this, like they got like a pinwheel head on them. They kind of get sucked down in the sludge, and all of a sudden they'll just stand up, and those things will spin, and they filter the water. Pretty cool, right? These guys, anybody know what these are? Forticella, hell yeah. Where are you from? You need a job?
Yeah, I do.
So these guys are kind of like a rotifer, where this is a piece of sludge basically. These guys will kind of suck down into the sludge, and then with their little tail there, they kind of just jump out and grab stuff, like a big-ass snake. But they grab big stuff. These guys are eating big stuff. These guys are kind of filtering the water. These guys are like a Venus flytrap, man. Something gets in front of them, whoosh, dead. And that's how they survive. But what has to happen for all these guys to survive? What's that? Got to have a load. What else? More importantly than just having poop coming into the plant. What? DO, for sure. What else? F to M? Phew, man, where are you at?
I'm Cheyenne.
I live just down the road, man. I'm 18 miles from here.
Easy now.
Oh, does he work with you guys? What are you guys doing? Scott, take these guys out back. All right. Where was I going? Consistency. That was my point before we got off subject here. Consistency. The load coming to that plant has to be pretty much the same all the time. Otherwise, these guys don't survive. If you get these weird influxes of, industrial waste or fog or whatever it is, these guys don't make it. These are the workhorses of the treatment plant. In the event that a slug load happens, or you get weird diurnal flows or anything weird, you get these guys. Now, anybody know what this is? I know it's hard to see way back in the room. Nocardia. It even tastes weird saying it. This is a filament. This thing is alive. It looks like, under a microscope, it looks like hair. If you can imagine just a bunch of hair hanging on a slide. That's what it looks like. But how you know it's Nocardia is right angle branching. So it's like a piece of hair with a right angle on it, right? If you look in your microscope, you get back to your plant and you're like, hey man, this real tall, dorky looking dude said I need to look in this microscope. And you see that. And your plant guys are going, yeah, things are good. Give it a week, because the plant will look like that foamy thing on the other slide. Nocardia happens due to high fog, usually, low DOs, really long MCRTs. Basically, the bugs don't have enough to consume to survive. And once these guys get in your system, the Nocardia, the filament, they're like the lowest form of bacteria. I mean, they're just above an amoeba. There's not much to them. But once they get that perfect balance of weird pH, like 6.5, 7 all the time, DO less than 1 all the time, tie that to some fog, tie that to some weird diurnal flows coming into your plant, these guys will explode overnight. And how do you get rid of them? Waste them. So when you waste them, where do they go?
Hopefully they'll, out to the receiving stream.
Go, God, Jesus. If anybody says the solution to pollution, get out. You're going to waste them to your digester. What's going to happen in your digester? Now you got a real problem. Yeah, it's just terrible. So, look in the microscope, because a lot of times your plant guys are going to go, man, we got a Nocardia issue. How the hell do we get rid of Nocardia? Some people put chlorine in the system to try to kill them off, but I call that nuking them, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how to calculate the demand of waste-activated sludge running through a pipe at 200 gallons a minute. You kind of just drip it in there and hope for the best. Sometimes you kill the Nocardia, sometimes you kill the whole damn plant. So I'm not a fan of that. But with Nocardia, the best thing to do to get rid of them is just figure out your process, figure out what's coming into your plant. And that's where you got to go. The plant operator guy has to go over to the pre-treatment folks and go, you guys see anything weird? I can't get my DO above 0.5. Now, as pre-treatment folks, you should be able to say, what? We've seen this happen, we've seen that happen, we noticed an odor this day, right? You got to work together. Your collections guys, those guys are in the manholes. Kevin used to work in the collections department. Noah is in charge of the collections department. When I was working at Box Elder, how many times do you think he called me and said, dude, there's something stinky in this manhole? all the time. Something's weird. It doesn't smell like a manhole. Or we saw a weird color. That's how your pre-treatment folks should interact with your collections people. Your collections people are your first line of defense, right? Your industrial users, you've permitted an industrial user. They had an illicit discharge. How long does it usually take them to get a hold of you? Within 24 hours, right? When they figure it out. Who's the first one to know something's wrong? What's that? Plant and collections. How many lift stations do you guys run? We all have a lift station, right? You open that hatch, look in there, see what your grease mat looks like, make sure your pumps are running, and you get that weird chemical smell. That's a call to the pre-treatment people, right? It shouldn't be, hey, plant guys, it smelled funny in there. Yeah, it's poop. It should be a call to the pre-treatment people. Give them a heads up. Hey, something happened. We don't know what it is. We're just giving you a heads up. It smelled like this. And from that, you should be able to go to your pre-treatment folks should be going, who do we have that has something that's petroleum-based? It smelled like diesel in the lift station, right? Your pre-treatment folks immediately should start thinking, who has a bunch of diesel? Maybe that gets you a little bit ahead, so when your plant guys are going, our plant's running like crap. The pre-treatment folks are already on it, and the collections people are already on it. Everybody's already in the know, right? Okay. What's this guy? Bristle worm. What about this guy? Nematode. You see a nematode or a bristle worm in your process without the Nocardia, what do I need to do? Everybody wants to waste. I don't like to waste. Let's kill them sons of bitches.
Increase DO.
Increase your DO, potentially. What's your FDM? What's your MCRT? You got to know FDM. We've talked about that a little bit. Food to microorganism ratio. It's a simple calculation. Basically, how much food do I have? How many bugs do I have? When the plant's running good, you better know what your FDM is. That way, when the plant's running bad, you know how to correct it, right? Everybody good on bugs? Good.
So Dave, I was going to say, one of the things is don't be scared because you see one. Be scared when you see a lot.
Yeah. Yep. So, do you guys all have the RTW? There's a big picture that every wastewater plant has, and it's got pictures of these bugs on it with like a graph, right? What is it? You're shaking your head like you know what I'm talking about.
A little bit.
What does it say when you have filaments just at the maximum amount? The technical term. Up the wazoo. That's the technical term. Legitimately. You look at Rothberg, Tamburini, and Windsor, the guys that actually developed that whole chart, it's like few, common, some, abundant, up the wazoo. If you get to up the wazoo, don't call me.
I need to determine MCRT.
MCRT, man, if Spencer would have given me a full day, dude, we'd be doing this. Pounds under aeration, right? So mixed liquor turned into pounds, so the volume of your tank times the concentration times 8.34, pounds of biomass under aeration. Anybody? Come on. Divided by,
What is this? No.
how do you calculate MCRT?
Divided by, divided by your mixed liquor.
What were you saying?
I'm sorry, it's got to be a volume.
Yeah, it's a volume.
Oh, yeah, that's right, okay.
Come on, somebody, help him out. He's from Wyoming. Pounds wasted. So how many pounds do you have versus how many pounds you got rid of? There's more to it. So there's SRT and MCRT. SRT is solids retention time. MCRT is how many bugs. It's a big calculation. It's real difficult to get kind of swamped up in it, but it's a really good conversation, or a really good calculation to figure out your plant. Because like Jessica back there, we run 75-ish wastewater plants in the state of Colorado, and every MCRT is different, but we calculate MCRT on every one of those plants once a week. I mean, it's an Excel formula now, right? Back in the day, it used to be a back of a napkin deal, but every one of them's different. So when people say, hey, what's wrong with my plant? And they tell me the MCRT, I'm like, I haven't been there yet. Let me get there. We'll talk. Okay, we talked about the activated sludge treatment a little bit. Let's get into how this all happens. Who hasn't been through their plant yet? Don't be shy. A couple of you, now you guys are just lying to me about being hungover and not raising your hand. I'll pick on you. Okay, headworks. This is where we remove the big stuff, right? How many people have found weird stuff in their headworks? All right, lay them on me. What'd you find?
Hard hats, buckets, teeth.
Teeth?
Like,
Dentures?
yeah.
Been there. That's what I have on right now. What do you got, Scott? Jail uniforms. All right. What? What is it?
A beaver.
A beaver. A box elder? What's Bodkins doing? Does he have a beaver hat now?
Wasn't there.
Oh. Who else? What do you got?
Pig hooves.
Pig hooves. Where the hell do you work?
Pueblo. Came from a septic collar.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you must be from Cheyenne. He's pointing at you. What'd you find?
Well, they just said that our plant, they found like a fetus.
Oh, yeah, that's rough.
Snake and survived.
What'd you find?
Snake.
A snake?
survived.
Oh, my God. All right. So I got to give you a little story. Is anybody in here from Boulder County, Colorado? Where are you at? Where is it? Well, you don't work in Boulder now, though, right? No, I didn't think so. Okay. So I used to work for a municipality, not Boulder, but surrounding area. And one of the guys on the collections crew called me up because I was the plant manager and the pre-treatment coordinator. And he says, you need to come up here, man. I said, what do you got? He says, there's something in this manhole. It's pink. It's weird. I'm not touching it. Cool. I'm in. I like to party. So I show up and this manhole's open and there's just this pink goo in this manhole. I mean, it's just stopped up the flow. I mean, it's rough. I don't even know what it is. I'm poking at it with a stick. It's wiggly. It's weird. It doesn't smell like anything. It doesn't stink. I'm like, what the hell? And we're in a residential neighborhood. I'm going, what the hell is this? So we went down a manhole or two and it's still there. So we're like, man, whatever this is, it's like stringy. So a couple, 2-3 hours later, we're still trying to figure out what it is. We're finding the manholes that it's in. It's basically everywhere except for like the top of this cul-de-sac. Like, okay, well, it's got to be in one of these 9 houses in this cul-de-sac. And we're in Boulder County, so everything's pretty expensive, right? Nice houses. So right about the time I'm starting to knock on doors, I get a phone call from the plant guys. They're like, hey, the mechanical screen is completely plugged up with this green or this pink stuff. I'm like, okay, well, I'm 3 miles away looking at pink stuff. So we got an issue. Anybody got any idea what I'm talking about right now? Some of you I've told the story to. Nothing? Pink? Okay. So I start knocking on the doors, and I'm in a residential area. One guy comes out, he's like, hey, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, you just home for the weekend, or, everything cool? He's like, yeah, we're good. I'm like, okay. 3 or 4 doors later, I'm knocking, just people, hanging out at home. All right. Knock on the next door. Dude comes walking out in a white lab coat. I'm like, all right, man, what do you do? He's like, oh, well, I said, what do you do for a living? And he says, well, here or at my day job? Lay them both on me. He says, well, my day job, I'm an IT analyst. I was like, cool. So maybe this is not my guy. I said, well, what are you doing here? Liposuction. Legitimately. Pulled him up on the Google. He's legitimate. So I said, well, we've got this pink stuff in a manhole. I'm going to need to talk to you. He says, yeah, you come on in. I'll show you what we do. I walk in, and there's literally 3 ladies sitting in the waiting room. And I'm the police, right? I'm the pre-treatment police. That's how everybody looks at us. I'm like, hi, ma'am, how are you? She's like, great, how are you? I'm like, better than you. Walk in, and no, I'm not joking when I tell you that there's a table in this room, like a dental chair, and a hole in the floor. An 8-inch hole in the floor. So that 8-inch hole, when I talk to our billing department and the people that approve sewer lines, they requested an 8-inch drain for a pool. Anybody got a problem with an 8-inch drain for a pool? I mean, That's number one, well, you shouldn't have approved that. And number two, there's no pool. So this guy was like sucking fat out of people and squeegeeing it into this hole. And he told me when I was asking about it, I said, well, how long have you been here? 2 years. It's like, we send out industrial waste surveys. He's like, yeah, but we're residential. We don't have to comply with that. You kind of do. So I find out after the fact that 2 years, all this stuff has been sitting in his 8-inch line, and he's pretty far from the sewer main. So it's basically just built up. It plugged up. So he called in Roto-Rooter, and they just blew it through. So I don't know if you guys know about fat from people, but basically after it sits with anaerobic conditions, no oxygen, in a pipe, it turns into a gooey mass that's stringy. So the pipe we figured out was like 213 feet long. I'm 3 miles, the plant is 3 miles from this dude's place, and I've got stringy pink stuff that long. Anybody ever played with polymer? It's like that. So, what do we do? What do we do from a pretreatment standpoint? Come on, Scott. What do you got? The only thing we could do from a pretreatment standpoint was surcharge. That was it. But it was a learning curve for me that when we send out industrial waste surveys, it doesn't just go to commercial users. It goes to anybody. Google is our best friend. Google stuff that's off the wall in your service area, because it's probably coming out of a residential building, and nobody ever knew to look there. Now, what did that gooey pink stuff do to my plant? What's that? Headworks, that was as far as it got. Thank God, right? It's organic. It would have broke down, but I didn't want to deal with it, so thankfully the Headworks was there to catch the big stuff. You guys have already talked about the cool stuff you find in a Headworks. I chew Copenhagen. It's a nasty habit, but I can assure you that I've gone to many, many gas stations and paid with poop dollars. Who hasn't paid for something with a poop dollar? Come on, Scott. Come here. I got a poop dollar. You got to go pay for stuff with poop dollars. It's part of the fun of being a wastewater guy. Okay, so after we're through the headworks, then we go into the reactor or the aeration basin, right? Everybody know what I'm talking about? The big tank with the brown stuff in it? Better not have any foam on it? Okay. That's where the magic happens. The influent finally comes. The influent is the raw sewage. That's where the food meets the bugs. They hang out. It's a happy medium. Everybody's hanging out. 4 or 5 days at St. Vrain. Clarification. Big round tank with the bar across the top. Everybody's seen one. Looks like a giant swimming pool. Solids settle out. Our bugs settle out. The clear water goes over the top from hydraulics, right? So as the water's flowing in there, the bugs are settling out. The water's going out. Disinfect it. All is good. Disinfection. Who uses chlorine? Stop. Stop it. That should be a pre-treatment regulation. Everybody should go to UV. Chlorine's a pain in the ass. It's a safety concern. I mean, I like to wear nice clothes, as you can see. I don't want any bleach stains. Okay, let's start with some, where am I at on time? Unlike Spencer, I will talk all day, so you guys got to shut me down. I was once quoted at a wedding saying, that chick seems really nervous about doing their best lady speech or whatever. I, on the other hand, feel that there's nothing better than Dave Lewis with a microphone, because you guys can't run away. Okay, small systems, SBRs. Anybody ever heard of SBR? Sequence batch reactor. Come on. Hell yeah, some of you have heard an SBR. Anybody run an SBR? Come on, you guys are missing out. Okay, sequence batch reactor. Small to medium-sized facilities. We run facilities basically from 0.5 MGD all the way up to about 1 MGD that's an SBR size. Community, like small bedroom community, like you've heard of like For example, like in Berthoud, Colorado, there's Berthoud Estates Community Association. It's 500 homes. It's too far to pump their sewage, so they have a little plant. All treatment is done in one tank. Pretty cool, right? Just a big concrete tank and everything happens in there. Fill, react, settle, decant. So is everybody following me here? You're gonna fill it up with sewage, it's gonna aerate, do its magic, then it's gonna settle, air's gonna shut off, it's gonna settle, and then decant is that clear water going out. So everything happens in one box. Variations are based on different discharge permits. I mean, there's a billion different kinds of SBRs. I'll talk about a few of them. But variations of that are, every permit's gonna have pH and temp, BOD, and ammonia, and E. coli or total coliform. In Colorado, we have regulation 85 going to be 31. Total inorganic nitrogen, phosphorus, TKN, nitrate, nitrite. And total nitrogen. Couldn't see it behind the bubble. Anybody have to deal with that right now? If you're from Colorado, you should all be raising your hand. Anybody from not Colorado have these problems? Utah, are you guys on board yet? Are you on board with nutrient limits yet? Are you? Okay, because South Dakota is not even close. I'm going to Aberdeen tomorrow or Sunday. From Aberdeen to Pierre, and these guys are like, we nitrify it like hell. I'm like, yeah, but your freaking phosphorus is 50. Ugh. Okay. So, SBRs are really, really good at removing these nutrients. We'll get into that here in a little bit. So, this is a conventional SBR, right? So we're filling it up with sewage. Here's our mixed liquor. We're gonna add some air to it. We're gonna let it settle, and then it's gonna decant, and then it starts all over again. Everybody following that? Why do we care about an SBR for pretreatment? Somehow I'll get pretreatment in here. Why do we care? One tank. Huh?
That's where the bugs live.
That's where the bugs live. Now, if you get a high load of zinc or a high load of chromium, right? One of your industrial dischargers dumps something down the drain. I have one tank, right? So I'm fill, react, settle, decant. What's the common denominator here? Bugs, 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 bugs. The bugs didn't change. It's the same bugs. So if you don't have a decent pretreatment program and you fill up an SBR full of a high strength load, you killed the bugs, you killed the bugs, you killed the bugs, still dead. Following me? It's a big deal with an SBR. In a conventional plant with numerous tanks, you might kill one tank, but you got another tank that'll survive. In an SBR, you kill one tank, you're dead in the water, right? Pretreatment's very, very important for an SBR. And I said it's from 0.5 to 1, right? MGD. Probably not gonna have too much pretreatment load, right? Or pretreatment worries. Probably not gonna have too much industrial contribution. How many people have an industrial user that has an SBR? There we go. Your slaughterhouses, I don't know if Adam talked about it yesterday or not, but I have 4 slaughterhouses that have their own SBR process that they discharge to the POTW. So, pretty cool stuff, right? Is it all coming together? All right. Fluidine SBR, junk. This was the cat's meow in like the early 90s. Basically, it's over-engineered. It fills, this is the baffle wall. So you got your sewage coming in, hits this baffle wall so it can't go into your reactor. And then, flows under like a grease trap, gets aerated, treatment happens, flows into this other tank, settles out the sludge, clear water goes out. This return sludge gets sent back over for those bugs to continue doing work. Problem is, this is also the waste line. So if I need to get rid of bugs, it ends up in here. So what happens with a grease trap, if you're filling up your tank, your primary tank and your grease trap, what happens to the secondary? All that crap ends up in the second one, right? So same thing in this plant. You waste all the bugs you don't want into the same tank that the food's coming in. So all that stuff ends up sloughing through your plant. So that was really the cool thing back in the 90s. Fast forward to 2010, ichthys. I am proud to say that every ichthys in North America I have touched. Every single one of them. I am the startup guy for Xylem on ichthys SBRs. I went to Belgium 2 years ago to start up the very first ichthys SBR. The cool thing about an ichthys, intermittent cycle extended aeration system. The cool thing about an ichthys system is basically the food comes into a separate chamber, all by itself. There's windows down here. So hydraulically, that's what pushes through. When we get into B&R, basically biological nutrient removal, you need a spot for anoxic conditions. Anoxic means what? Come on! No oxygen, but a presence of what?
Low, slight presence.
Well, now we don't even know what we're talking about. Technical term for anoxic is absence of oxygen, presence of nitrate. Now, you guys are both correct, because you said very low oxygen, but what is nitrate? NO3. So is that an oxygen form? Absolutely. Now, if I'm a bug floating around in the old wastewater treatment plant and there's no oxygen, but I'm hungry, what am I going to eat? Nitrate. Why? Because I can literally bump into it and have it go through my cell wall and I'm full, right? So with the ichthys, we make that SBR process very, very small, small scale, small flows. We have a spot to where we can start treatment before it even gets into the reactor. The reactor portion is basically the same as the other SBRs. It fills and decants and does its whole thing. Any questions on an ichthys? Pretty cool technology. They're all over the place now. Okay, so process control and reporting. SBRs do have operational variables that need to be monitored to maintain compliance and to save funds, right? Because as a wastewater treatment plant operator, we've got a big budget, but they're constantly trying to chop it off for parks and rec, right? Everybody's got to mow the grass. We've got to have more dog parks. But don't worry about the poop. It'll just happen. There's a big filter down there. Told you. So DO and ORP. Anybody ever heard of ORP? Okay, so the cool thing about being a consultant is I get to work on both sides of the fence now. Back in the day, it was plant, pretreatment. Now I do plant, pretreatment, and industrial users. Hence the name of my business, Direct Discharge Consultant. Everybody thinks that's the goofiest name possible until I run into a pretreatment guy and they're like, pretty cool name. Because they get it, right? There's indirect dischargers and direct dischargers. I focus on the direct discharge, straight to the river, straight to the receiving stream. But the cool thing about being a consultant on what we do is that I get to work on the industrial users as well. Because they're like, man, box elders permits are hanging me out to dry, saying I can only discharge half a part per million zinc. But I do a metal fab. I got to have all sorts of zinc. I'm in 433 categorical. Okay, how do we make this better? What kind of pre-treatment can we do in your plant or in your system to make sure that you can meet box elder's limit? That's super fun, right? Kind of cool. DO and ORP, the reason I bring up ORP is because a lot of my industrial users that I consult for to meet district or city municipal pre-treatment programs, we're using ORP, putting in online analyzers for ORP because it's a much finer, minute concentration, if you will, of ORP, or of DO, I'm sorry. Because DO, right, everybody talks about DO. You got to run your DO to 2. In your aeration basin, it's got to be 2. To nitrify, you got to have 2. Well, we're finding more and more that 2 was a number, but when you use ORP and you can actually see the electrical force within a wastewater because it's negatively charged, we find out now a little more definitively that our high end of our DO can be 0.8, 1. We're saving those funds, right? We're saving wear and tear on our equipment. Cool stuff. pH and temperature. I'm sure you guys have been beat to death with pH and temperature all week. It's part of the federal regs for pre-treatment. No high strength, no high pH, no low pH, no high temperature, no low temperature. All that makes sense in the treatment plant. Ammonia. Every permit in Colorado has an ammonia limit. How do you get rid of ammonia? Oxidize it, right? Air. Turn on the air, let it oxidize. Right? Everybody following me there? Everybody's heard of oxidation? Isn't that weird that I bring up ammonia right after I talk about oxidation reduction potential? How's that going hand in hand? How are you? Good to see you. ORP directly affects DO, which directly affects your ammonia concentration. TSS, every permit has it, total suspended solids. Okay. Everybody good on SBRs? Okay. Conventional wastewater treatment. This is probably what most of you guys have. If you're in a pre-treatment program for your city or district, you probably have some sort of conventional plant. You have numerous tanks throughout the plant. Oop. Come on now. Okay. I kind of just said 1 MGD or larger. That's not 100% accurate. Some SPRs are bigger than 1 MGD. Consists of a series of tanks to complete the treatment process, equipment and variations of all these things. Like if you go to Colorado Springs, it looks different than Box Elder. If you go to Cheyenne, it looks different than Fort Collins. They're all doing the same work, right? And then we finally get into nitrification and denite. Some of you, this is going to be boring, but some of you, it might kind of get the wheels spinning a little bit about your pretreatment program. Okay, to nitrify, conversion of ammonium, NH4, to nitrate. Everybody got that? Everybody heard of the nitrogen cycle? Ammonia, nitrate, nitrite, gas. Everybody's heard that, right? If you have not, call me. I will talk to you for hours on end until you hang up. Now, what's the difference between ammonium and ammonia? What's that?
One of them's in solution.
Bingo. Okay, so NH4. Now, when we talk about sewage or wastewater coming to a treatment plant, are we talking about ammonium or ammonia? So I've got ammonium. Did anybody say ammonia? Who's saying ammonia? Where are you from?
Evanston.
What's that?
Evanston.
Hell yeah. Why does he say ammonia and these guys are saying ammonia? Ammonium.
There's one in Wyoming.
What's that?
There's one in Wyoming.
I'm good with it. Now, we said it's in solution, right?
Yeah, but ammonia doesn't stay in, it's a gas, right?
Well, how do you convert ammonium to ammonia?
To ammonium to ammonia.
Yeah.
Well, you have to strip off that hydrogen,
How do you do that?
probably by adding oxygen to it.
How do we do that in a pipe? Who's been in a sewer line? Who's been in a manhole? Turbulence in a manhole. That's enough to convert ammonium to ammonia. So in the wastewater world, we talk about ammonia as nitrogen. Literally that volume of water cruising through a 12-inch pipe, getting necked down to an 8-inch and then back into a 24. That amount of turbulence converts. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so how do we nitrify? We take our ammonium, usually ammonia, and we convert it to nitrite and then to nitrate. How do we do that? Nitrobacter, that's my bugs. Who said that? Who said that? Is my bug man over there. Oxygen. We add that DO. We turn on the blowers, we fire up that DO. So we're converting the ammonia to nitrite. Now, the conversion of nitrite, NO2 to NO3, how fast is that? That fast. You can't measure it. The regs say you can. But literally, you take a sample right now, check it for nitrite, and then you take a sample right next to it and test it for nitrite. They'll be different because it's converting all the time. The conversion from ammonia to nitrate takes a little bit of time, right? We've got to add the air to it. But basically, if we think about nitrification as a whole, we're taking this ammonia, we're adding air, and then as soon as that happens, we're done. Because now we have zero ammonia, but what happened to our nitrate? We had let me back up. Is there any nitrate in the raw sewage? Not taking into consideration any kind of industrial load?
No.
No. Shouldn't be, right. Okay. So we're converting ammonia to nitrate. Anybody do drinking water in here? You do drinking water? What's the problem with nitrate in my drinking water? Blue baby syndrome. If you're a water treatment plant operator, one of your main goals is to make sure you have no nitrate. Because I forget how it actually works, but it's basically the hemoglobin in your blood of a fetus. It basically makes it to where the blood cannot accept oxygen. If there's a doctor in here, somebody correct me.
Nitrate's reduced in the stomach acid to nitrite, and then it goes in the blood and oxygen scavenged.
Okay, that's what I meant. But essentially, we don't want to put nitrate in our receiving stream. Why? Because it might be drinking water. What else? Come on, somebody yell at me.
It's fertilizer.
Fertilizer.
It's a nutrient.
It's a nutrient. What happens when you put nutrients in the river?
You get algae.
Anybody from back east? I'm from upstate New York. Everybody ever been to Lake Erie? You ever been to Lake Erie? When I was a kid, you could walk across it. I mean, the algae was so thick you could literally walk across it. Now it's oligotrophic because of the zebra mussels, and you can see the bottom in the middle. But long story short, if you think about nitrate and ammonia, phosphorus, all those things, if we're creating it in the wastewater plant, the last thing we want to do is put it in the damn river. Okay, sources of ammonia. This is pre-treatment, come on. Other than just being poop, which has ammonia in it, where else are we getting ammonia from? What's that? Urea. Where else? Runoff. What about from your industrial contributors? Anybody got a slaughterhouse? Where's Adam? You got any ammonia in that slaughterhouse waste? A little bit, a little TKN. So that's where your ammonia comes in. How many people have a local limit for ammonia? Ooh. If Al was here, he would not be wanting to talk right now. He'd be walking out. Because why don't we have an ammonia limit in our freaking local limits? Why? Tyler, lay it on me. But what if I can't? Then what? So Al, when I broached the subject, when Reg 85, Reg 31 came out in Colorado, Scott, you got any insight on this?
I don't know what you're going to say.
Oh, no, so when I broached the subject about Reg 85, Reg 31 here in Colorado, because we're talking about a limit of phosphorus of 0.7 and a total inorganic nitrogen limit of 0.1. I mean, that's almost impossible with a biological process without adding some sort of chemical. And I'm an anti-chemical guy because I love my bugs. But when I broached the subject with Al about, hey man, and it was actually at Box Elder, I said I'd love to be able to do a local limit for Reg 85 pollutants because our plant was not designed to remove these pollutants down to the level that they're expecting, the state is expecting. He didn't want to talk about it because I don't think there's science out there yet to make a local limit on an industrial user for something that changes forms almost immediately. Has anybody got a thought on that? Talk to me.